Hi everyone, it's Diane with SewBatik, and today we're going to talk about the In Control tool bag by ByAnnie Patterns. I am absolutely thrilled with this tool bag, and to be honest with you, maybe it's just because I've done so many of the ByAnnie Patterns. I found this one to be actually quite simple and basic. So if you have not sewn up one of the ByAnnie Patterns, this might be a good one to start with too, because you're getting, except for the mesh, there's no mesh in here, but you're getting an introduction to binding, to fusing for dividers. You're getting an introduction to zippers, and just basically how to work with the soft and stable and all of the fabrics that you need to make a simple project. So let me talk a little bit about this In Control tool caddy that I've overfilled already. I'm gonna take a few things out of it so that you can kind of see what the bag, I keep calling everything a bag, but that's just me. I'm going to take a few more things out. My rotary cutters. I think that's enough just to kind of give you an introduction to what this bag has. Okay, let's start with the front. The front of the bag has two slide-in compartments. The back of the bag has the same, and I have already filled mine with my mechanical pencils and some of the ByAnnie. This is the stiletto, and I have SewBatik tags for all of our products. The side here has a zipper compartment, and I will say if you have an extra zipper, I probably would do another one on this side, just because I like spots for things that you don't want to lose. But this side here has another slide pocket, and that's where I was putting kind of my basic rulers that I use almost every time I do any kind of sewing project. Then inside is, and I'm going to get a little bit closer here, but there are dividers, and the dividers have, what do you call it? Gussets, I guess is the right way to say it. They are not attached at the bottom, so they can move with whatever you put in them, okay? So I'm going to show you the center, and there are 4 different size ones. Now you can customize this once you get the technique down for how to create your dividers. Customize this to whatever you want to use this for. I probably, for sewing tools, maybe didn't need them as deep as what some of these are, and let me show you how deep they are. I can take my travel mug here, this is my coffee mug, and put it in one of these. So it does hold a lot. You could put a book in here. You can put thread cones in here, and everything will be where you want it to be. So it's just a simple tool caddy that you can learn so many different techniques, and I am absolutely going to love this. Oh, and the bottom also has, let me pull this out, it has a stabilizer, a base stabilizer. The pattern comes with a sleeve instructions on how to make that. I do not have a base stabilizer that fits this particular size, which is 5 by 8 3/4. So what I did, and you'll see it in my little video, is we have old cutting mats from traveling and from all the work that we do within our store. And so we cut up one of our thick cutting mats, and it's in here, and it's going to be perfect. So if you have anything like that, if you have cardboard, take a cardboard box. It's just something to give the bottom of your tool bag a little bit more stability. That's all. So I'm going to tuck that back in there before I lose it. But you as I've said, I think I just said this 100 times, you're gonna love this. So I'll put all of these things back in here after I show you a little bit more about this bag. But the measurements for the bag are, it is 6.5 inches high. It is, I was gonna remember this, but I didn't, 10.5 inches wide, and it's 6 inches deep. And I'm gonna show you this. I took everything that I had in this basket, which was on my sewing table, all of these things that you see in front of me here, and that became organized. Now, what we need for this project, we need a main fabric, a lining fabric, and a coordinate. I had previously quilted up fabric. So the Phoenix Dusty Denim is my main fabric. Vine Cream Pearl is my liner. And I used the Violetta Twilight Blue is my coordinate. And the yardages for those are 3/4, 3/4, 3/4. It is, you'd think with something this size, you wouldn't need that much fabric, but you absolutely do. I did not have very much left over. And the one thing about the In Control bag that is different for me was that there are non-quilted pieces of fabric from every one of the three. Whereas in past projects, we quilt up the main and the lining fabrics, and then we use the coordinate for everything else. Well, this, we have to make sure, so really read your instructions when it comes to how much fabric you need to quilt versus how much fabric you have to have for non-quilted portions of the project. It does make a difference. So this one here, the quilted fabric is all around the outside and the bottom and the pockets in front. The dividers in the middle they're not quilted fabric. They have interfacing in them, but they're not quilted fabric. And the handles are the part of the binding that goes all the way around the outside. We have a little bit of extra soft and stable needed for the handle here. And then the hardware that's needed is simply 4 rectangles, 1 inch, because the strapping that's in here is 1 inch, and you only need about a yard of that as well. So that's what our kit is going to have, all of those components to it. So if you go to our website, you can find the In Control project kit. You can select any fabric combination you'd like, and we'll package it up with the zipper, with the hardware is optional, pattern is optional, just in case you have the pattern. We don't want you to have to buy it a second time. And then we'll give you the fabric, the stabilizer, the interfacing, everything else that's needed to finish this little fun caddy. The pattern itself, as with all of the ByAnnie patterns, is amazingly well written. Follow it step by step. What I strongly recommend is, first of all, you can follow this video because I take you through absolutely every step. And my goal is to always outline and summarize that step and then walk you through how to do it. And then I show you the results of it. Every now and then I'll sit down behind my sewing machine and take you through how to stitch it up. Most of the time, that's the piece that's self-explanatory, so I don't include that in the video. But sometimes it is really important to show you a specific technique, and so I'll go ahead and do that as well. But every single one of the steps that are in here, I have taken you through in this video. So there's also links. You can jump to each section within the description below on this video. So that'll help you if, for some reason, you got as far as the dividers but can't remember how to do the stitching on the dividers. Jump to that spot in the video description below and we'll get you right to that, okay? In addition to the components of the kit, what I use the most, I will tell you, is my scissor. I used a very small but very handy Olfa ruler. This is only 1.25 inches wide, and it's about 12.5 inches long, and I use this all the time. I use my hot ruler, which is perfect for pressing your 1/4 inches or 1/2 inches when you have to turn something. This I use all the time. And I have old cases of ByAnnie hardware that I use to store clips. Wonder clips are a necessity for anything that works with thickness. And I just keep a packet of 10, and that's all I use. And then I also have my pins that I have to have, a rotary cutter, and oh yes, I do use an extra long, this is 6" by 24" ruler as well. And oh my gosh, the most important thing is the ByAnnie stiletto. You have to have this stiletto. It really makes stitching around tight curves and putting binding on and making it as smooth as possible. The stiletto, if you have a stiletto, just grab it. Otherwise, the ByAnnie stiletto is something that you absolutely have to have for these projects. I think they're wonderful. And every now and again, I will say this, you will or may need a seamer burr, but hide that away somewhere so you don't have to even think about it. So, so that is it. Let's get going. And the first part of the ByAnnie bag is to, of course, quilt your fabric. So pay attention to what you're cutting, using the soft and stable to quilt your fabric, and just a fun design. Can be simply straight lines, can be simple squares, it can be a nice little doodle or meander, whatever you want it to be. And so the first several steps are basically to get organized and to cut out your pieces. And then we start right away with preparing each component, from the handle to the pockets, to the dividers, to the side panel that goes all the way from the side to that side, and the front and the back. So I really want to let you get started with this project. Follow along, like I said, and it's really a fun project. This, I think, took me in stages. If I were to do the whole thing all at once, probably a day and a half to do it, simply because I really take time in working with all the various steps. So have fun, and we're going to talk to you when we get all done. Our first step is to prepare the handles, and these are padded handles. So we need to grab the 2 pieces of coordinating fabric that are identified as padded handles, and also the 2 little strips of soft and stable. So basically, we're going to craft these 2 padded handles that go right on top of the caddy. Okay, so let's get pressing. And I always take a look at which side is my right and wrong side of the fabric, and I think this is going to be my right side. So that is wrong. This is wrong. And just decide on a batik, you know, they both look very similar, even if you can tell the difference between what's kind of considered a top and bottom or right and wrong. Just distinguish which ones you like. And I look at the motif shape, and the one that looks kind of the most defined and clear, I define as the right side. But most of the time when I'm cutting out all of my pieces, I designate right and wrong before I'm done cutting, so that every piece has the same right and wrong. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to fold in a 1/4 inch on each of the short edges. And we're going to press. Now, the one thing that does come in handy is your hot ruler. This is one of these tools that's fantastic because it has all the little markings, so you don't really even need to guesstimate, I guess is what I say, and instead use the markings which are along each one of the 4 edges of this ruler. And if you line everything up, you can simply Put it right on there, press, move your fingers. Fold the next one up. Actually, I need to move that just a little bit, otherwise it's going to be a little bit too much. Press, move your fingers, and there you have your 1/4 inch. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to fold this in half, and I'm just going to do one here just to show you, one at a time. Fold it in half, and we're going to make a crease right down the center of the handle lengthwise here, okay? So we're going to make a crease, and then we're going to open up this crease, and we're going to fold each side to the center. As you can see, we're narrowing this piece of fabric down more and more and more. Just kind of work it into the middle. Okay. Now we're going to open this back up, and we're going to slide one of these soft and stable padded handles that we've put together here right in the middle, okay? And it looks like it might, well, it's inside there. You can trim it if it's a little, I'm gonna trim mine just a smidge because I think it's just a little too long. I don't really want it inside that, or extending past that seam. So I'm gonna pull that in just a little bit, because there's going to be a lot of bulk in the first place trying to attach this back to the main caddy bag once we get everything set to go. Okay, we're going to put that in, and then we're going to pull this in, and we need some clips. Let me open this up, and I'm going to clip along this edge to hold everything in place, and we're going to stitch that. I will just go to my sewing machine and do. I'm going to stitch 1/8 of an inch all the way around all 4 edges. So we're just sealing this padding inside what I would call its casing. So all the way around all 4 edges, 1/8 of an inch. So here's our piece that's stitched all the way around, 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. And the next thing we're going to do is create this handle. Do you see how that is already stitched? I took the time to do one of these. So let me show you what we're going to do. Decide on the side you like the best, whether it be the top side, or if something didn't fold correctly, you want to hide it. Just decide which side you like is the best, and I like the top. And so what we're going to do, and I have, by the way, just to remember, I've already measured in 4.5 inches on each side, and I have a little mark here. And what we want to do is I am simply going to put a pin in the back of that mark, that line right there, on both lines. And that's where I know I'm going to start and stop stitching. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to fold it in half. Just make sure all the padding is inside, because it may want to bulk, you know, kind of like bulk up on you and come out the other way. But just kind of force it a little bit with your fingers, with the pressure of your fingers. And then you see how this pin is right there? I simply pin or clip right past that pin on either side. Now again, push that in, so that's my stop stitching line right there. And I'm going to clip it right past that pin. Now when I go in and stitch on my sewing machine, I'm going to follow my already stitched line here, the 1/8 of an inch away, and I'm just going to start and stop on both pins, and we end up with this handle. And the next thing we're going to do is just on the wrong side, which is your inside here, make a mark using your fabric pencil 3 inches up from this edge, and that's going to help us with placement, just like that. Later on, 3 inches up, we're going to mark a little line, and it's on the back side of this, the wrong side. So even if you use something that's just a little bit more permanent, it does not matter. It is not on the right side. So once this is done, we're just going to set these aside until we start assembling our caddy. The next piece of the handle is the handle tab. And for that, we're going to need the 4, because there's 4 different handles. And we're going to need the piece that's called the handle tabs from our coordinate. And so there's 4 pieces here. And then we also need the 4 pieces of strapping, the 1-inch strapping that we cut to 8 inches. So we're going to make the casing for each one of these straps. And then we're going to attach these using our rectangle rings to each one of these ends, making a full handle unit. So that's our goal in this particular step. So the first thing we're going to do, I'm going to set these aside, but the first thing we're going to do is sew up our casing here for each one of the straps. And it's really simple. All we need to do is, with right sides together, stitch 1/4 inch from the edge from one short end to the other. And then I've sewn each one of the long edges, and now it's time to press. So basically what I do, it's kind of tricky to try to press open a seam that you're going to turn to be in the middle of casing. So all I do is I open up one edge, leaving the other one flat, and press it. And then I flip it over and I press this one back, trying to keep my fingers kind of out of the steam. As you can tell, it is very hot. There we go. And that is how you press that open. Okay. Then I'm going to use a bobby pin, and what I like to do is a really large one here, and I am going to attach that, and we're just going to turn this right side out. And this isn't such a long tube to work with, so this actually goes pretty fast. I'm pulling this to get it started at the bottom. There we go. Okay. And then we'll unhook the pin, work that out. And if you'd like to, just center that seam, because that's going to be the back of our strap that we don't even see. Okay. And then I take and just give it a little bit of a press just to make sure that it's flat. Now, take one of these casings, and this is so short that you might not need to use a safety pin, because it just slides right in, to be honest with you. At least that's what I did with the first one. And if you simply hold it and kind of nudge it along, it really just goes very smoothly through. And then if you need to push it further, just take another one. It actually works really well. And slide it up next to the other one and make sure that it's in about 1 inch. There, yeah, that was already in 1 inch. Because the casing is just 1 inch shorter than each one of the edges, because we don't want to sew through all of that bulk. So let me see if I can feel 1 inch there. Yep, there we go. And the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to do that same thing to the rest of these. And then we're going to stitch along each edge here to top stitch it. since this is the back, then take this, our rectangle hardware, put it right in the center like that, okay? Clip it to hold it in place, get all the rest of them together, and then stitch 1/8 of an inch along the edge or 1/4 inch along the edge, whatever feels most comfortable without getting your fabric stuck in your throat plate of your sewing machine, because that is really a tiny spot. So just work that as best you can. And then, and I've already completed one, then we're going to measure up from the end, the 2 measurements in the pattern. This is going to be our connection point when we attach this to the other handle. So we just want to make our markings on each one of these and get all 4 ready to attach to the other handle. Now it's time to complete this handle unit, and we're going to take 2 of the handle tabs and our padded handle, and this is the right side. Remember what your right side and wrong side are, and you've got a marking on the wrong side here. That's 3 inches up. So what we're going to do is put this end through our rectangle, fold it up so that and I'll clip some of these threads here, but the finished edge is right next to our 3-inch mark right there. I am going to clip that thread. That's really in my way. There we go. And just clip it for now. Use a clip, get it into place. And the same for the other handle. Again, right side through to the right side, flipping it to the wrong side, and then clip it. And then you can just pull that rectangle away so that it's, because we're going to need that out of our way while we top stitch this in place. So we'll get this attached here. Now, on this side, what we're going to do is simply stitch across here, okay? And then make an X right there. And follow the instructions to do that. And then this will be attached to our handle tab, and we still have this left, this little marking here. We're going to use that when we attach this to our actual tool caddy. When I left you last, we were just doing the finishing touches, top stitching each one of the handles. And so those are all done and ready to attach to the caddy when we get to that step. Okay, so I'm just going to set these aside. And now we're going to work on the pockets. And the first thing we're going to do, the pockets are actually relatively easy. I'm going to show you on the cover of the pattern what we're going to do first, but we're going to focus on the outside pockets of the caddy. And they have what are called slip pockets on the front and the back. And then there's a zipper pocket on one side and a plain slip pocket on the other side as well. So what we're going to do is, with the combination of our quilted fabric and binding strips and a zipper. So pocket A and B are this one right here. Those are going right along the front edges, and I'll slide those away. I'm going to put that up there. Stay organized. So A and B, front and back. And then here's our binding strips. I'm going to set that aside for a moment. And remember how we do this, but if you've never worked on one of Annie's projects before, let me tell you how this is done. Flip over your pocket, your main pocket, and then with the binding strip, with wrong sides together here, no need to press that. What we're going to do is use a clip and clip this folded to the back top edge of our pocket. So we basically stitch a 1/4 inch away from the edge, attaching the binding to the back or the lining side. Then we're going to flip this around to the front. And let's assume this is attached. And top stitch. Curl it around to the front and then top stitch right along this top edge of the fold. And that will finish off the binding right on the top of both pocket A and B. So this one will go on the back of this one. Okay. So that's our front and back pockets. That's all we're going to do with these for now. So I'm going to set this aside. And then we have pockets C and D. And I'm going to take the pins off of this one as well. These are the side pockets. So one of them, which is pocket C, is going to simply have the top edge bound. So follow that same step from the last pockets A and B and bind the top of this. So we're just going to stitch a 1/4 inch away from the top edge there, fold it around to the front and top stitch. So that'll be pocket C. Pocket D is just a little bit more to it. So pocket D, we're going to have a zipper. So we have the binding for the top edge of our zipper. We have the main quilted pocket, and then of course the zipper. So the first thing we're going to do here, and I'm just going to talk you through this, is with the right side of the zipper and the right side of our pocket, we're going to stitch. You're going to have a zipper extending along both edges here, and I just pulled that out just to get it out of the way. But we're going to stitch a 1/4 inch away from the edge there. Then we're going to flip this to the front and finger press this down, okay, so that your zipper is completely flat. And then we're going to top stitch along this edge here. So we're really hiding this stitching of the lining inside the zipper, okay? So once that's done, we're just going to pretend here. Then we need to bind the top edge of this so we have a nice finished edge to it. This then will be attached and sewn down to the side of our caddy. So with right sides together, or wrong sides together on our binding again, we're going to bind the top of this zipper, lining these up here, lining up the binding with the sides of the pocket so everything is in alignment. Let's put together pocket D on the sewing machine. I think even though I described kind of how to put each one of the sections together, sometimes it's okay to just go through and look at it in detail. So the first thing I'm going to do is add the zipper to our quilted fabric. And this is right sides to right sides. And what I do is I do clip this and then I flip it upside down. You're going to think I'm kind of odd, but I don't like stitching before and beyond places that I can't really see from below. So I have my zipper foot attached, and I'm going to stitch a 1/4 inch away from that edge. And my 1/4 inch is barely in sight here. So let's move this over. I do have the zipper just slightly extended past my 1/4 or my quilted fabric. And I'm going to pull my thread underneath, put the needle down, and then I'm going to back stitch just a couple of stitches and then stitch forward. And I am really guiding this along one little spot on my sewing table here, and everybody knows where their 1/4 inch mark is, and so I'm following mine, which happens to be this line here marked number 7. Okay, and so I'm just trying to make sure that this stays right along there as I stitch. this just a little bit further, line this up. It takes a little bit of fiddling, but take all the time you need because there's nothing better than having this done correctly. And then I backstitch. Okay. Clip my threads here, and you'll see what I mean when we have to finger press here. So the next thing we're going to do is I like to flip this to the front, but what we're going to do is finger press this flat so that the back of the zipper is flat. So it's kind of counterintuitive the first time you do it because you're trying to think, well, it's flattest if I'm like this. Well, it is because the bulkiest piece of this join here is the quilted fabric, but that is truly what we're trying to get as flat as possible. And then we're going to top stitch right along here. And I'm going to switch out my thread. I will be right back because I like to have matching thread to my fabric, not to my zipper. So I'm actually going to change this out to be white thread and finish this little task. I am ready to go. All the thread has been changed here. And so I'm simply going to, I'm going to move my needle way over here. There we go. Because I like to run the zipper foot right along here. Now you could flip it around and run it on the other side. It's whatever you prefer and wherever you like to put your zipper foot. And I just simply hold that and get started here. And we're just edge stitching to finish this edge and to keep the zipper flat on the other side because that's our goal. Okay, you see? That is how you attach that zipper. We'll get rid of the threads here. Now, let's work on the other side. So the other side, we're gonna flip this back over and find your right side of your fabric. That is the right side of my fabric. And I'm going to line this up because our goal here is to make sure that our binding and our pocket are all lined up. And actually, I think what I'm going to, is just put that in my hand instead. And so we're going to line that up and line it up over here. Now you're going to think I'm silly because in 1 second I'm going to change my thread back again. And then we will stitch along here. Okay, now stitching 1/4 inch away. And now we're going to fold this to the front. And top stitch right along that edge. I'm going to get rid of some threads there. And I always look to make sure that I am covering the back and feel comfortable with that. And then I pull it to the front as I go. Actually, that's a little too far away. There we go, right there. And then we'll pull this and keep it straight as we go. So there is our zipper casing for zipper B. It's time to create the inner front and back dividers. And I know you can't see it on this picture here, but inside the caddy are dividers on each side. They're not connected to the bottom, but they're there to help stabilize whatever is inside the caddy. So we're going to create those right now, get them ready to put some pleats and different things in them. So the first thing we need to do is find our fabrics. So we need 2 fusible interfacing pieces. We need, from the main fabric, we need 2 dividers. One is for the front and one is for the back of the caddy. And then we also need the lining pieces as well. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to set these aside and we're going to fuse. Let's get this here and take these off. But we're going to fuse to make the main fabrics of these dividers just a little bit more stable and sturdy, so that when we do have items in our caddy, I'm trying to find the wrong side here. I think I want that to be the wrong side. We want to make sure that everything can be as stable as possible. So I'm going to put both of these up here at the same time, and with the sticky side down, and just center it on here because they're cut smaller so that we keep the bulk out of the seam allowances. So center them as best as possible. And it looks like we want to keep them about 1/4 inch away from the top and the bottom, and about 1 inch away from each side. So I always press from the center, let it sit for a couple of counts, and then move it. And I don't use steam when I do fusible interfacing, but read the instructions that come with your interfacing to know exactly how it's intended to be applied. But basically, we just want to hold it in place to get the fusible component to stick to our fabric. Okay. I believe that is all I need to get that to stick. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to set one of these aside and we'll just work on one at a time. And I'll probably just show you how to do one and then you can go ahead and do the second one. But basically now what we need to do is attach, and I flip these over just to make sure of which is the right side and which is the wrong side. Okay, I want this to be my right side, and we're going to place these right sides together, and I'm just going to pin in a couple of spots across the top here. That flies off here all the time. Okay, and As you can see, the lining side of this is longer, and you'll see that in the pattern as well. So basically, we are going to stitch a 1/4 inch across here. We're going to come back and we're going to flip this wrong sides together, matching the open end, the open long end. By doing that, we're creating what I would call a faux binding along the top. Once that's done and pressed in place, stitch 1/8 of an inch all the way around the open 3 edges. And we're ready to go to the next step of adding some pleats and things to this divider to make it easier when we put it inside the caddy. After we made our initial divider here, I just went ahead and followed the instructions for marking in each one of the pleats on both the lining side and the main side. And then what we do to actually create the pleats is simply fold along the line and stitch 1/8 of an inch away, pivot, and stitch all the way back again. We're not stitching through the faux binding up on the top. And then also on the lining side, doing the same thing, stitching up and back again 1/8 of an inch or thereabouts. And what it does, now the only line, I am going to make note of this, the only line that you don't sew through is the one that is measured at 9 1/4 inches. And I didn't have a separate color to mark this one to not stitch that one. So what I did is I used a pin on the top of each one of these. So when you stand this up, and this is how it's going to look once we put this in our caddy, is it gives these openings. So we're going to have the ability to put something in here without, it'll stand up straight. Let me put it that way. So whether or not you put a rotary cutter in here or whatever it happens to be, I guess it would be this way down, it's going to stand up in there really, really nicely. So those are the 2 pleated beveled dividers that we have ready to go for the next step. The side strip is actually, interestingly enough, the bottom. The bottom of the caddy with its sides going up this way. So what we're going to do is take our piece, our quilted fabric that's called the side strip, and I have already, and we also need pocket C and pocket D, okay? Then I have already taken the binding from our coordinating fabric and finished the binding on both edges of the side strip. And simply take your binding, fold it in half with the wrong sides together, and then stitch it to the back, pull it around to the front, and top stitch. So that's what we're doing on both of our binding edges. Then we need to mark, we need to take a mark about 5, I shouldn't say about, but 5.5 inches in from each edge. And that's a placement mark so that we know where to put our pocket C and pocket D. So that is what we're going to do next. And the steps here are very easy. I'm just going to simply take you through them. What we're going to do is we're going to position pocket C right along our marked line, stitch 1/4 inch away from this edge. Now what I would probably recommend is to clip a little bit away from this stitch line, but clip this in place so you don't have to worry about it moving out of alignment there. And stitch 1/4 inch right along this edge of the pocket. Then we're going to flip this up this way so that the right side of the pocket, let's just assume that that's stitched, is up And then we're going to stitch a 1/4 inch away, not a 1/4 inch, 1/8 of an inch away from the edge all the way around, okay? And of course, not on the top edge because that's our pocket. So that's pocket C. Then we're going to do the same thing for pocket D. We're going to position it on this edge, this marked line, stitch a 1/4 inch, flip this up, right side's up, and then what we're going to do is we're going to stitch all the way around a 1/4 inch, 1/8 of an inch. I keep saying a 1/4 of an inch, but it's 1/8 of an inch. Just follow our stitch lines basically when we sealed the edges of our pockets. And what we're doing here is make sure your zipper pull is inside, because when we stitch across here, we're sealing off our zipper, and we're also going to seal the edge of our binding and then down this edge here. So we'll be able to trim our zipper off, and we have our side piece ready to go when we start assembling the front and the back of our caddy. We are getting there. All of the individual components to the caddy are now kind of constructed. And so now we need to start building the front and the back, because we've already done the bottom up to the sides. And so we're just going to get everything ready for the front first. So the first thing we're going to do is take our front quilted piece and add the binding to the top. I've already done that. Then we're going to mark a couple of lines. We need to know where to put our handles, because those are going to go on the front and the back of the bag. So I've already marked, I've taken a moment to mark our lines, and then we're going to place one of the handles that we've already constructed right next to that line and inside that line. So we have about 2 1/4 inches away from the edge. And I'm going to clip the bottom just to keep it in place, and the other side as well. Now, always remember that our goal is to make sure that the right side is up on our handle, and we've already made our X through the top portion of our handle, and we want to make sure that the seam is inside. And we'll position the second portion here, which is right there on the inside of our 2 1/4 marked line. And there we have it. So what I'm going to do next, actually, is I'm going to add another clip and see if it'll stay. I don't know if it'll stay, but I'm going to try right there and right there, just to keep this in place, because our goal is to stitch. What we're going to do is this. We're going to go across the bottom, up a side, following our 1/8 of an inch top stitching already that exists. We're going to go up to the top mark, which is 4 inches. We're going to stitch across, stitch down, stitch over, make an X through the middle, and then come right back down again, and then we'll be done. So we're going to do that with both of these handles. And then we're going to come back and we're going to add a little bit of the dividers. I think we're going to work on the dividers next from the inside of this caddy. So let me do this one more time. We're going to take and stitch right following the same stitching lines that are already there. We're going to go across the bottom to secure it. We're going to go up this side to the top line, go across, down, across, make our X, and then finish coming down. Okay, the handles are on, and I have my front divider. So the next thing we're going to do is flip this over, and I've already marked the markings of where we're supposed to put this divider. And it is placed right side up on the lining side, and everything seems to flatten out pretty nicely. So we want to make the edge of the divider, it's going to sit right along that top line here, which we want to keep away from the bottom so that when we're sewing our front to the bottom of the caddy, that none of the divider is in the way. So first I'm just going to put a little clip on this side to keep it in place. I'm going to slide this over and line that up, do the same thing, put a clip on this side. And remember when we put a pin in this marking on the divider? Well, we want to line that up right there with the line that we just drew on the lining side of our front piece. And so all I'm going to do here is I actually am just going to pin this right below the faux binding there, because I'm going to take that pin out when I'm done here or when I start stitching. But I also want to put a pin here, and I'm going to put that pin across because I'm going to pull this pin out. What we want to do is stitch following our 1/8 inch stitch line along this side, and then I'm going to turn this upside down. We're going to stitch up this line, stop at the faux binding, pivot, and go all the way back down again, and then just back stitch right here, just to make sure that this stays secure. Because, you know, when you think about the pressure that you might be putting on these dividers, once you start filling up your caddy, we just want everything to stay in place, okay? So keep these out of the way for now, and stitch, stitch, and stitch. Okay, we are all stitched, so we have the divider in place, and I've already gone ahead and pinned the pleats kind of away from the center and away from the edges so that nothing will be in the way later on. And make sure that your pins are facing this way so that you can just pull them out easily when the caddy is all done. So we're going to turn this around, and now we have a front slide pocket that we're going to add to the front, okay? And here, we're simply going to stitch, and I'm going to clip this all the way around here. But all we're going to do is, following our 1/8 inch stitch line all the way around, we're going to stitch here to secure the front pocket to the front panel, putting everything in here together, okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to mark, and I want to be able to see this marking later, but 5 1/4 inches is the center. And I'm just using a white pencil here because I can still see it even though it's very light. But that is going to be our stitch line to make our pocket divider on the outside here. So first, stitch along here 1/8 inch, come back, starting here, stitch up to your binding and stitch back down again. And now we're going to do, I think for this project, it's our very first curved edge. So what we want to do, and let me show you the pattern here real quick so you know what we're talking about. The bottom of the caddy, the corners are curved. And with most of the ByAnnie projects, when we've got a nice little curve like that, it makes it so much easier to add our binding when we're finishing the bag or the caddy, or any of her bags. So this is typically a 2.5 inch curve. And the bottom of a cone of thread, most cones of thread, is 2.5 inches. And so I just grab a cone of thread, whatever's near me. I use this as my guide. And what I also do is I kind of, in my mind's eye, I want to put a an X through the middle of this, a crosshairs, and then I just use this curve from one point to the next as my curve. So I'll take this one. I'm going to take a pencil because I don't care if I see it or don't. I shouldn't say it. If I can see it writing on it, that's the most important thing, because it's going to get hidden in the binding. So it doesn't matter if it shows. So what I do is I'll take and follow the edge with my pencil like that. Do the same. Ooh, I can barely see that. On this edge. So when I get to the spot, once I've done all my stitching, I'm going to come back. I'm going to clip my curves, and then I'm going to top stitch one more time right on the edge, because we want to always seal our edges, and it just makes it so much easier for the next step that we have to do, which is going to be attaching the front to the bottom and the side piece. So stitch all the way around 1/8 of an inch, up and down to create our divider, cut our curves, finish our curves, and we'll be ready to start the back piece. We are almost there. The next thing we're going to do is, actually we have 2 steps left. We're going to stitch the front to the combination bottom side piece. And then once that's done, we're going to stitch the back as well. And remember, when we put these together, what we're doing is we're lining up our sides and lining sides together. So once everything is stitched, we're going to add the binding to the edges here. So start by clipping, using your clips, the top edges together, and I've marked my center. So I jump over and make sure that my centers are lined up. And I put 2 clips on either side of that pin. And then we come around again. And I'm not doing too much here besides making sure that fits okay. And then the remaining top edge, we want to make sure that is clipped as well. So that is ready to go. I might actually trim off a little bit of the excess binding. I'll stitch it together first and then I'll clip that off. So this is what we're going to do. And the best way, the easiest way to add this side piece to your front is to lay this just like it is on your sewing machine table. So you want to have that piece flat, and then it leaves it open for us to maneuver this side piece as we stitch on our sewing machine. Now, the one thing that I do, I'm going to grab one of these, is I do recommend that you have either a stiletto or if you don't have the ByAnnie one, definitely get this. We do have it on our website or wherever you buy your ByAnnie things. But we want you to have this because it keeps your fingers away from the fabric when you're stitching so close and trying to maneuver the fabric all at the same time. So you're going to go to the sewing machine and stitch along this edge 1/4 of an inch. So now we're moving off the 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch. And then you're going to manipulate your corners using this stiletto to keep this flat as you stitch around this with your sewing machine. Okay, so that's the use of this, and I've been using this throughout the entire project at my sewing table. So hopefully you have this and are using that as well. So that's our goal, is to stitch the front to the side and the bottom of our tool bag. I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to come back and do the same thing with the back side of the tool bag and get it ready to do the binding. And this is the exciting part, isn't it? Now we have the front, we have the sides, we have all of the back. Everything is connected beautifully. So But of course it looks very unfinished because we have to do the binding on the outside of the edges. And this one's kind of an interesting binding, I will tell you, because it's continuous. So we're going to do this. We're going to start at the bottom with our binding, and I've had this sitting over here now. I made it ahead of time, of course, and I just use, let me start with this other edge. I just, as Annie recommends in all of her patterns, and if you're a quilter, we're not pressing this flat. Instead, it really works so much better if there's no crease on the middle of our 2 1/4 inch binding strip, and this is bias. So Annie recommends pinning our strips together all the way along, you know, however many inches it happens to be, just to make it easier to keep it together and have it ready when we need the binding. So we're going to start in about, actually, and I'm going to start, let me think, I want to finish it nicely on the outside. So I'm going to start putting this on the inside. So I had to think about that for a minute. So what I'm going to do is start down here, giving myself a little bit of a tail because we want to have some flexibility to connect our binding strips once we get back to this. So I'm going to start down here, take a clip and put it in place. And I'm just going to show you here, we have to go all the way around, and then we reach this spot here where we have a connector. We're going to connect our binding from here to here, and well, before we continue down that way. Okay, so we're going to have a little extra grab handle when this is all done. So once you get this attached to here, just continue stitching. But it would be, if you could just take a moment and stop stitching, take your ruler, measure 5.5 inches is what's in the pattern. Mark your 5.5 inches, but stitch 5.5 inches and then reattach. And then we're going to finish this little portion here in another step. But continue stitching down this, all the way down and around until we do the same exact thing over here. Mark off 5.5 inches, but continue stitching because we're sealing off that binding. And then we're going to continue down around until we get to our join mark over here. But stop stitching right as close to this curve as possible. And then we're going to join our binding in your favorite method of joining binding and tack it down, and then we'll be done with that portion. And then we just need to flip it to the front and top stitch all the way around. I finished adding the binding and also did the join down here. I have to work on getting that just a little bit tighter, but it's not so bad this time around. So what we need to do now is bring the binding around to the front, kind of work it all the way around, and use some clips just to kind of keep it in place for now. Just a couple of clips around the sides, and if something doesn't look right, we have to go back and fix it, okay? But this looks, you know, really, really good. I think this is going to be good. And this is the time when we definitely use our stiletto to make sure, oh, and cut some threads if you have anything in there that shouldn't be in there as you're going along the way here. But this all looks pretty good. It does feel thick to your fingers, but that's normal. There are so many layers here, so that's expected. And so what we're going to do is let's start here. We can start right over here, and we're going to stitch and secure the line or the binding right on the front, and I guess do our best to make sure that it's even across both sides, and try to keep your stitching inside the binding on this side as well. I'm working with dark blue thread, so that's my goal. My goal is to not for some reason, if I do, but I don't want to actually stitch in any of the main fabric here. I just want to keep it on the binding. And I will tell you, I have made several of the ByAnnie bags and worked with binding this way. You know something, it just takes so much practice. I'm getting slightly better as I go, but I'm a very tough critic of my own work. So I just keep going. Okay, and then flip it over on this side, and I want to talk to you a little bit about this area right here, which is the kind of an extra grab handle. So what we're going to do is finish this as we stitch, so we don't have to stop stitching. So turn, here is the fold, and here are the open ends. Now we've already stitched a 1/4 inch right there. So let's fold that in, fold this around to make it look like a binding, okay? And you can either pin it in place, just kind of to tack it down, or clip it, you know, use a clip to do that, but fold it in and make sure that when you're finishing this stitching here, when you come around and stitch down, that it covers that little spot right there. Okay, so pay attention to that spot. But otherwise, it's just simple edge stitching. So stitch right along this edge right here, securing your grab handle. And then work it again over to this side. Make sure that we've covered up any of the stitching on the inside there. I'm going to put a clip right there. And then just continue all the way around. All the way around, all the way around. And then do that same step. I'm just going to clip this right here so you can kind of see on this side, which is going to now be over here. So we want to fold, let me get this over here, fold and then fold. This is just sort of in thirds, if I could describe it that way. Fold and then fold. And I'm going to put a pin. It's a lot of layers to go through, but that will stay really, really nice so that when we get around to stitching it, there we go. There, tuck that right in there. There you are. Okay, so let's stitch our binding on, and it's top stitching all the way around to finish, and we'll undo our flaps in the middle and do the big reveal. And I can't wait to fill this baby up. This is going to be so much fun. Well, believe it or not, we are done. This is really quite something. I love this little caddy. I just think it is so neat. Now, we have to do a couple things. First of all, I want to take out all these pins because I still have the pins sitting in here for when we were securing all the dividers. So now I can put all of my tools, well, there's a coffee mug. This is just going to be so neat. I can't wait. But we'll finish here. And let's see. I want to put the zipper pull on. I didn't take you through steps on how to make the binding or the zipper pull or the sleeve for the stabilizer that we're going to put in the bottom. Because those steps are pretty self-explanatory. But here is my zipper pull, and I just simply take this, what am I doing? Wrong way. Through like that, and then I take both ends and put it through the center here. You might have your own method of tying a zipper pull, or if you have a really fun decorative zipper pull that you can use, that would be fun as well. And so that is my pole, and I actually, you can either tie a knot at the end. I just simply cut it off at an angle, and that's just all I do for mine. I just think that's perfect. So there's the zipper pull. Oh, and this is how each one of these handles turned out. I do want to make one comment. I did backstitch along here on every one of these corners when I was finishing the binding. I just like that little extra bit of stability, and so I did backstitch on each one of those corners. Okay, so the other thing that I did make is the sleeve for a base stabilizer. Now, I did double check the Annie product line, and she does not have a stabilizer that fits this particular size. So what I did is I asked Bruce if we had any extra cutting mat material sitting around, and we did. And so we cut this to fit the size, and this is 5 inches by 8 3/4. So I'm just going to slide that in our little sleeve here. And as you can see, there's extra fabric. So you can either just tuck it underneath and lay it in, or take your sleeve and turn it inside out, inside your, hopefully you can see what I'm doing here, but tuck it inside there, and then slide this in the bottom. So now we have a finished mat in the bottom. There. And that is our In Control Tool Caddy. And don't you just absolutely love the results? And it's really, like I said in this video, it is really quite a nice tool caddy for your sewing space, like I'm going to use it, or for anywhere in your home. I like the picture on the front of the pattern as well, because it shows this particular caddy with a soda, a phone, a book, and something that you can have in your living room. And just match your colors or give this as a gift. It can be just a wonderful little gift for a special person as well. So, like I mentioned earlier, this is a kit on our website to make it really easy for you to start. You'll have all of the components to make it. If you quilt up fabric like I do, which is more than you need, and you need a smaller project to work with, again, this is 3/4 of a yard of 3 fabrics, plus the stabilizer, and the zipper, the hardware, and interfacing. And you have yourself an In Control tool caddy. And let us know if you have any questions, what you think, and keep sewing, smiling, and sharing.